Admissions in higher ed is stuck. Outdated tools and rigid processes slow institutions down, making it harder to truly connect with today's students. But Brittany at the College of Albemarle shows there's a better way.
At College of the Albemarle, we're always looking for new ways to better serve our students. Let's face it, though, life doesn't always fit into a 9-to-5 schedule. That's why we've been so excited about the AI tools we get to use through our CRM, Element 451. This makes connecting to COA easier than ever. We're working on Bolt AI Assistance, Bolt Discovery, and these are tools designed to give students access to COA resources and information anytime, day or night. Got a question about admissions? Need help exploring programs? Looking for resources? These tools are like having COA staff at your fingertips, ready to help whenever it's convenient for you.
Your prospective students get the information they need when they need it, and your team saves time. Visit element451.com to see how AI can help you simplify your admissions process to stay focused on what really matters, your students. Welcome to Talking Tactics, a podcast that gets you results. Each episode features a single tactic, implemented with limited resources, that move the needle in some way. I'm your host, Kibilds, Vice President of Strategy at Ology, a marketing and branding agency for education. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the most clever folks in higher ed worldwide, doing the work day to day, just like you. Talking Tactics is part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com. Welcome to Talking Tactics. I have a special twist to today's episode because my guest is me. But instead of sitting here and talking to myself, I've actually invited a fabulous guest host, Erin Fields, Enrollify's marketing manager. Erin is going to guide us through today's episode, where I'm sharing one of our favorite tactics of my entire career. The one time I orchestrated a two-way texting campaign to 16,000 admitted students that resulted in a 29% engagement rate and personal conversations with almost 4,000 admitted students. Erin, thank you for coming on the show as a host. Are you ready to talk tactics?
Listen, Day, I don't mean to pump this up as much as I'm going to, but I was born for this moment. So I am definitely ready to talk tactics with the master of talking tactics.
Born for tactics. I love that. I feel like that should be our brand moving forward.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to put on my guest hat now, and you take it away.
All right, everybody putting on the host hat. So, Day, let's go back to the beginning because you said that your campaign resulted in like a 29% engagement rate, almost 4,000 admitted students. What were you trying to improve or solve with this campaign that you launched?
Yeah. Well, it was April 2020, and I feel like leaving it there says enough.
True.
Like everyone else who was working in enrollment at the time, right? When everything shut down mid-March, we all went into an actual panic because that's key yield season for us, right? So like everyone else, all my colleagues all over the world, we were all thinking, what do we do? Like, what do we do to ensure that our class actually comes? What do we do to maintain the connections we need to maintain if we can't do the activities that we normally would do, right? So we had to cancel our open houses. We had to cancel our visits. We had to cancel all that stuff. So, of course, as a digital marketer and digital first millennial woman, I thought we got to go digital. So that's where this idea came from.
So where did the idea come from? How did you come up with the idea? Because yes, we are millennials, digital natives. And during that time, nobody knew in April 2020, nobody knew where we were going at that point. Nobody knew a lot about COVID, how long we were going to be in a lockdown. Like I remember when COVID started and my institution said, all right, let's extend spring break by a week and then we'll come back.
We'll be back.
And then that's not what happened.
No.
So where did that idea come from and how'd you come up with the idea?
The idea came from really thinking about what is the most meaningful thing that we could do to help our admitted students make a decision. And, much like every other institution out there, one of our, I think, selling points was community, because it's true. This is what institutions do. They build great communities. So how could we make or help our prospective students or admitted students feel that sense of community without being able to come to campus? What I thought was, well, the very best way to do that is human to human, peer to peer, one-to-one conversations. And I was really ambitious about it. Like I really wanted to find a way to be able or give an opportunity to every single one of our admitted students to speak to somebody on the campus one-on-one. And when I say speak, I don't mean in person. I mean interact and engage. That was the big goal. That was the big idea.
Community is such a big, unique part about higher ed. You think about coming together for sporting events, like you said, open houses. And so for that to be essentially stripped away and for higher ed marketers and admissions professionals to really have to essentially pivot faster than we've ever had before. I mean, what were your feelings going into something like that, living in the moment?
I mean, honestly, I was excited. I feel like a lot of us, like the people like you and me who are like, let's try this, let's do it. Like we've been waiting for permission to do something risky and bold our whole careers, right? So I felt great. I felt pretty confident. I knew this was going to be interesting. But I still had to do it in like the least costly way possible, because similar to my peer institutions, our budgets had already been set and most of the budget had already been spent, right? There wasn't extra money. So I remember back then I had worked with a tool at the previous institution I worked at Cornell called Through Text, where we used it then to reach alumni during Giving Day in these kind of one-to-one conversations. And what I loved about that tool is that it was the least expensive platform that you could use to have these one-to-one conversations without like a massive integration where you need to issue an RFP and it's a full software thing and it's connected to any data sets. It's literally just a tool you can use. So the other part of that tool that I loved was the fact that you only pay 25 cents per messaged contact. And I thought that was awesome because then we could really control the cost. And there wasn't like any setup fee or any professional fee costs or anything like that. What if we do it that way?
Mm-hmm. We love the 25 cents. Do you know if it's still 25 cents today, Day?
I checked. It is still 25 cents today.
We love that even more for us.
We do.
I would love to hear more about how you rallied support for this project, because things were shifting so much at that time. And we do have that initiative. What was the planning like? Or was it kind of like, obviously there had to have been some strategy. How did you secure the buy-in? How did you make it all come together, getting that buy-in process from your leadership?
Yeah, so I was really lucky back then that my director really trusted me and like believed in my recommendations, and also, again, taking advantage of a good crisis, right? When people are a little bit worried, they take more risk. So my leader like bought into the idea. Securing help from the campus community, I think, was the most fun part because it couldn't just be my team. We could not reach 16,000 students. And also the admitted students didn't want to hear from their admission counselor, right? Like they want to hear from a peer, a current student. They want to hear from a professor maybe, or an alum. So I said 16,000. That's the number of like offer holders or admitted students we had. And the first thing I had to figure out is, okay, how many texters do I need then? Like what is the feasible amount of people assigned to one texter that could happen? that could actually be doable. And I basically just randomly guessed 100. So I needed then 160 volunteers. Each one would have 100 people that they would text. And I was assuming, of 100 people, like maybe 10 will reply. And that would be totally possible to handle on the volunteer side of things.
Well, did you hit 10? I mean, did more than 10 usually reply? So then it was like oh shoot, like these people are getting more answers than I expected. Did you hit along that goal of at first?
Yeah. So the overall engagement at the end of the campaign was 29%. So we actually had like 3 people per 10 reply to the text that we sent.
And in a good way, really, this is a fantastic example of influencer marketing.
Yes.
In a way, peer to peer. You think about how even, my bread and butter is organic social. And you think about even from a brand account versus an influencer sharing your message, it's a proven fact that people are more likely to listen to the influencer, what they're saying versus what I'm saying on a brand account. And this is a direct correlation to this, just in a different channel.
Exactly. Like that's exactly where the idea came from. It's that fact, right? That we know influencers are so important in that specific stage of the funnel. But that was also kind of, the biggest lift in terms of making this happen. How do I get 160 volunteers from the campus? So I had pretty good social capital at the time. And because people had liked kind of the work that I had been doing. So I made a simple form, like a Qualtrics form, which is the tool that we had internally, but it could be any form. And I asked all of my stakeholder department college partners to send the form out to their communities. So, I worked with all my associate deans to send to their faculty. I worked with my partners in alumni affairs to send to alumni. And it was basically gathering interest from faculty and current students and alumni, like, do you want to do this? Like, do you want to volunteer to text admitted students during this unprecedented times? To my surprise, 460 people filled out the form.
And you were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like a good whoa, but whoa.
I'm like, what? Truly, I still am shocked. And this is why I really wanted to make this episode, because I could not believe it. And so what's even more shocking though, Erin, of those 460, 64 were professors,
really?
Faculty members.
Wow.
Tenured faculty members. What?
That's huge.
Right?
I mean, students being influencers is one thing, but faculty, that's huge. That's an admissions counselor in itself.
Yeah, honestly, I was just shocked in the happiest way. But then, of course, the hurdle of, okay, I have 460 volunteers. How do I get all these people ready to actually do this? And the first step was to get them to sign up for the platform. So again, through text was the platform. And in that process of them being like, okay, you showed interest. Now you need to go make an account. I lost 100 people. Which is fine because I only needed 160 based on my super scientific calculations at the beginning. Yeah, that's right. So then we had it was 350 volunteers at the end.
That's still really good, honestly.
I am pretty proud.
Absolutely. I mean, I am proud of you, Day. I see why this is the one that you chose to talk about on your episode.
Somebody asked me about this tactic, please.
Now, all this success, but we know that there are always some bumps in the road. So looking back retroactively, what would you say were some of the biggest challenges that you encountered along the way, and how did you push through those things to keep things on track?
Yeah. In retrospect, I am terrified of what I did, truly, because it could have gone so wrong. It could have been so wrong. People could have just been texting inappropriate things like that could have happened, but none of that happened. The challenges that I do recognize and we improved on for future years that we did this was, number one, many students did not believe this was a legitimate thing. They thought it was spam. They didn't understand. And that's because it had not occurred to me to send an email or some sort of message to tell them this is going to happen. You are going to be texted by a legitimate member of the Western community. I had not told them that. And so, of course, they get a random text from a number they don't know that's saying, I am so-and-so from school. They're not going to believe it, right? So that was one. The second was, this is funny, a lot of students applied with their parents' cell phone number. And we obviously only had access to the information on the application. And definitely some questionable rules about opt-out versus opt-in texting. It's a little bit different. It was a little bit different at the time here in Canada where I did it. But the parents would respond like, can you text my student? And we're like, no. And we can't change the number we have. Sorry.
Sorry about it.
You should have thought about this when you put your phone number and on your kid's application. What are the 10 AI tools you can't afford to miss in 2025? From automating tasks to personalizing content, find out at AI Engage Summit. This free virtual event on February 25th and 26th will give you the tools to thrive in higher ed's AI-powered future. Register now at enrollify.org/engage.
Similarly, when I worked in graduate admissions, we would have the same issue with emails. Even graduate students would put their parents' email. I mean, like, it wouldn't happen all the time, but there would be a few, and then so-and-so's mom would email us, and,
Yeah. No. There was one instance where somebody posted on Reddit that they were getting late night and inappropriately personal messages from one of our texters. Obviously, that's a huge red flag. The platform allowed for us to have a back end where I could actually see all of the conversations that were happening.
Good.
I went in there and I looked for every conversation that was happening late at night. We had set the campaign so that the texters could not text after 11 p.m. Eastern, which meant that it was not actually possible for someone to be getting text messages that late at night. We weren't doing this with international students because we couldn't text them. So I was like, the latest it could have been is like midnight if they're in like Greenland or something, or the East Coast of Canada. So I couldn't find it. It was a total lie. But it definitely, it showed me some of the risk, right?
Right.
So in retrospect, now it didn't happen, but if I were to do this again, I would probably come up with some sort of conduct agreement or something that the volunteers have to sign when they sign up, just in case there's some protection, or not protection as much as hey, let it be known that you can't text after this time, or
right, setting that guideline, and
exactly,
so they have something to work from.
Yeah.
Now, I know you talked about having about a 29% engagement response rate, 4,000 conversations. What other metrics do you think were impacted by this, and by how much? What impact did you see? What feedback did you get from the audience? Things like, how long did some conversations go on between students? Would it usually be 5 messages, 60 messages back and forth? What were some of those things that you learned?
Yeah. So the response rate on its own really shocked me. A 30%, almost 30% response rate meant that we had almost 4,000 one-to-one conversations. And when you think about the typical size of our incoming class at the time was about 5,000 students, that's incredible that we could have reached. Not every student we talked to came, but the order of magnitude of that was really surprising to me. In terms of the actual conversations, the platform gave me some really interesting metrics. There were 29,000 messages exchanged, which is a ton. The longest conversation was 120 messages. I think those people became best friends forever, honestly.
They were Facebook friends after that.
Yeah. And then the average was 3, though. It was the average was, hi, I'm so-and-so. And then they would reply, oh, okay. And then I don't have any questions. And like, it would end there. Like that was the most common conversation when you think about how many students we reached and how many actually engaged. But my favorite results are the anecdotes. So somebody posted on Reddit, it's just like the other person who was like, somebody's texting me inappropriately. There were many posts, but my favorite was one that was titled like, is it normal for university professors to contact students? And then in the post, it was like, I got a message from Western, which was the school I worked at, and I haven't gotten a message from our competitors. Like they listed 2 of our competitors. I just think this is a really nice gesture. And I'm like,
Aww.
Yes. As I told you, like I had access to the back end, so I could go in and look at the conversations. And they were so wholesome. It was such a beautiful display of the true community traits of this institution. And so the prospective students were grateful, the admitted students, but the texters took their job so seriously, so seriously. Like if, they got a question that they couldn't answer because they weren't part of those clubs or something, they would go and crowdsource an answer from their friends and then get back to the texter. Or we would see them kind of come back to the conversation a couple of days later, and like professors would write like detailed explanation of the opportunities in their college. It was just so wholesome. It was so touching that some of those conversations resulted in quotes like, this is the conversation that made me make the decision to attend, or this chat was a tipping point for me. Your answers helped me make a decision that I was like, yeah, this was worth it.
Oh, that's so awesome. And going back to when we were talking about earlier, influencer marketing just between the texter and the textee, the prospective student, then it gets amplified when the textee is then sharing information with other people who have maybe not been texted yet. Like when you're seeing those results on, the good ones on Reddit, and someone else sees that and they're like, oh, whoa, they do this thing. I haven't, like you said, I haven't gotten that from other colleges.
Yeah.
That makes you stand out. And
it
that
really
is awesome story, Day. Thank you so much for sharing this tactic. I had not heard you talk about that tactic before, but I am so honored that you asked me to host and lead such a important conversation here today.
Well, thank you so much. I have been wanting to share this tactic so much. It really blew our yield out of the water that year in ways that we were not expecting. I think we had over 30% yield, and it, made residents lose their mind. But I was really proud of me and my team.
Absolutely. So, Day, you usually ask your guests this, but since you're the guest, I'm going to ask you this. Where can folks contact you if they want to talk with you?
My LinkedIn is the very best place. All right. That is the end of our episode today. Erin, do you want to do the show's signature closing line?
Oh, you bet. To all our listeners out there, follow and subscribe to keep walking the walk and talking the tactics.
The Talking Tactics podcast is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions pros find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's bests as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Jenny Lee Fowler, Jeremy Tiers, and so many of your other favorite leaders in higher ed too. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com.